Hello and welcome to Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui in Beijing. Following the steps of her predecessors, including Lian Chan and Wu Poxun, Kuomintang chairwoman Hong Xiuzhu is now paying a visit to the mainland. She has already met the CPC leader Xi Jinping before going on to the Cross-Strait Peace Development Forum. Hong's trip marks the first visit by a KMT leader since the party lost the Taiwan leadership and the legislative majority to the opposition party of DPP in elections in January. What significance does the Xi-Hong meeting have under the current circumstances? Is the KMT able to get through their difficulties soon? And where is the cross-strait relationship leading? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Zhong Houtao from the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences and Anna Tangen, an author and a columnist. We'll also be joined from Taipei by Joanna Lei, former Taiwan legislator. But before we begin our discussion, let's take a look at this.
Xi Jinping met with Hong Xiuzhu and the members of a delegation at the Great Hall of the People. He put forward a 6-point proposal on cross-strait relations. Xi said both sides should adhere to the 1992 consensus, which affirms the One China principle. He stressed the mainland would oppose forces supporting Taiwan independence. Xi urged the two parties to promote integrated social and economic development and carry forward Chinese culture. He hoped the two parties could work together for the well-being of the people across the Taiwan Strait and could commit to realizing the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Hong Xiuzhu said China's Communist Party and the Kuomintang should improve communication mechanism on the basis of the 1992 consensus and the opposition to Taiwan independence. She said the two sides should enhance economic cooperation and maintain peaceful development across the strait.
Well, what do you think should be the interesting part of the current visit by Hong Xiuzhu, the newly elected KMT leader?
The most interesting part is that Hong Xiuzhu emphasized two phrases. The first is 1992 consensus. She tried to repeat this phrase time and again just to show that 1992 consensus is the political basis for the interaction between the two parties and between the two sides across Taiwan Strait. And another phrase is peace. This is the first time for KMT to issue or propose peace platform. In past, we just focus on cultural, for economic cooperation and people-to-people exchange. But this time, we just focus on peace development.
And what do you think should be the understatement for emphasizing the word peace or peace development forum between the two sides?
Well, it's interesting that you brought this up. I mean, there was a warning by the DPP that she was not to engage in any kind of forward-looking activity promising anything. I don't know. I think she's just trying to show people optically that she's able to get along with the leaders in China. I think she's betting that long-term there are going to be problems with the economy given the nature and extent to which Taiwan and China are joined.
Thank you very much. Let me cross over to Joanna Lei, who's standing by in Taipei. Hello, Joanna. Now, Dr. Zhong Houtao said two messages got to be highlighted when we examine closely what is being delivered by the current visit of Hong Xiuzhu, the newly elected leader of KMT. One is, of course, the 1992 consensus, the other, peace. First of all, let's look at the consensus. She mentioned twice the word 1992 consensus in her presentation during the visit to the Dr. Sun Yat-sen Mausoleum in Nanking, old capital city of the KMT government before 1999. Do you think this is likely to anger the DPP, the ruling party in Taiwan?
Well, I think, Yang Rui, this is a fantastic question because DPP has been ambiguous in terms of 92 consensus. They kept saying there was a 1992 historical meeting. However, I don't think Hong Xiuzhu is trying to please anyone. She is merely stating a long-standing KMT position. KMT engaged in the 1992 dialogue. KMT's ex-chairperson Lian Chan went to mainland China in 2005 on the basis basis of 92 consensus and proposed a peaceful development approach. And 11, 12 years later, Hong Xiuzhu reiterated KMT's long-standing commitment to 92 consensus and the 2005 peaceful development approach, I think is entirely appropriate. On the other hand, I also heard from that DPP is a little enraged by this. I think DPP has repeatedly said to Hong Xiuzhu that you have no official position, and I think she will be under no disguise to say she represents the government. However, as a party leader, just like Lian Zhan in 2005, she went to China with a newly adopted party platform. The party platform is called Peace Platform, adopted formally by the National Party Congress on September 4th. So I think she is fully mandated to not only go as a leader of KMT, but also to communicate the KMT party platform, which is a peace platform, as opposed to DPP's Taiwan independence platform.
Joanna, do you think our emphasis, although it's a joint effort by the KMT and the CPC to lay emphasis on the word peace, issues to Tsai Ing-wen, the newly elected leader of Taiwan, that if you refuse to accept the 1992 consensus, then peace is likely to be derailed, and there wouldn't be any luxury, for example, of having closer economic relationship. Peace will be shattered as a result. Is that a threat actually coming from the mainland?
If it were a threat, it was a very gentle one, because everybody understood, at least from the KMT side, that the current peaceful development has preconditions. The a priori condition across Taiwan Straits are A, 92 consensus, B, a joint commitment to achieve peace across Taiwan Straits. When Tsai Ing-wen was running her leadership campaign, she only focused on maintenance of status quo without specifying how she will maintain status quo, nor did she specify what status quo really meant. And I think with recent poll data, you could see for most of the Taiwanese, status quo means peace. Anything that upsets peace will be against the will of the people, which is really, really clearly indicated in both Hong Xiuzhu's speech as well as recent poll data.
Dr. Zhong, is it true that majority in Taiwan actually favor maintaining status quo across the Taiwan Strait?
To some extent, that's true. The majority of Taiwan common people favor to maintain the current relations. But the basis is the two sides should based on the political foundation that is 1992 consensus. If there is no this kind of political basis, then it's quite hard to maintain the status quo.
Tsai Ing-wen did say something meaningful in her inaugural speech, and perhaps also in her interview with the Wall Street Journal. She would not go back to the path of confrontation with the mainland as what happened during the administration of Chen Shui-bian. She also acknowledged that she would respect the constitution of the Republic of China.
Yeah.
And we refuse to accept the Republic of China because it's the underdog in the civil strife. What do you think of her message in allegedly respecting the constitution of the ROC, the Republic of China?
To some extent, we should say she is trying to move further as she accepts the so-called ROC or ROC constitutional order. And since, according to the so-called ROC constitution, it is defined that the two sides belong to one China. Mm-hmm. So that's really a big move for Tsai Ing-wen herself, since in the past she never said it just this way. But we should not neglect her own actions. I mean, her actions does not in accordance with her words. In actions, she just tried to pursue the so-called soft Taiwan independence. For example, she tried to pursue the Taiwan independence education in campus and try to let those young people know Taiwan is a special country or something like that.
And Anna, at the same time, Tsai Ing-wen also said in the inaugural speech that she would definitely respect the opinions of the constituency. Namely, Taiwan is a democracy, so to speak, and she could not do anything against the will of the majority who voted her into office. What did she mean?
Well, I mean, what she means is, there are two camps in Taiwan. We've gone over this many things. They both believe that Taiwan is separate. There's just a different. I think the most important thing is this visit by this KMT. She ran on this position that she wanted to get closer to China, that it was the only way. And she was rejected. She lost. She was 13% in the polls. They changed candidates. Now she's back as leader of the party. They've adopted her pro-China situation. Opinion. But it doesn't remove the fact that many Taiwanese do believe that they are somehow separate and different, and this is part of the problem. The propaganda that she's pushing, both at the educational level and internationally, unfortunately, you can do all the talking you want, but the realities are that 40% of their trade flows are with China. 70% of all FDI from Taiwan is in China. 10% of the entire workforce working, all right, from Taiwan is in China. These types of realities are inescapable. They're not in a position to do that. People talk about China only growing at 6 or 7%. They're growing at just over 1%. They had a recent revisement upward, but it is not enough, and it is not addressing a lot of the long-term issues that are prevalent in Taiwan, especially in the economic field.
Joanna, the KMT, now the opposition party, looks so weak in the wake of the elections and still wrestling very hard with the very issue of survival, it seems. Given the fact that their bank account has been closed and pending investigation. Now, obviously, observers of the Taiwan politics are skeptical about the capability and credibility of the KMT, and they don't take KMT so seriously at this moment. Yet, at the same time, for the first time, Joanna, the theme of the Peace Development Forum between the two sides of the Taiwan Strait delivers four aspects: politics, economy, culture, and young people. For the first time, politics is prioritized on the agenda between the two sides. What does that mean? What kind of signals does the emphasis of politics actually deliver?
Well, I was part of Lian Zhan's 2005 delegation, and I was also one of his major spokesperson. During that time, we actually designed two different fora. One is a political forum that will engage in more important political discussions, hopefully leading to a report. And the other one is economic trade and other cultural exchanges. You understand that the 10 cross-strait forum held between KMT and CPC were focused primarily on the second, which was the development forum, and we also even signed ECFA and other trade-related pacts. The peace forum never took off. So this is the first time people across the Taiwan Straits, led by KMT and CPC, decided to engage in a discussion in which political issues and peace issues are formally on the table. Well, I understand that KMT is in a very weak position. Ma Ying-jeou won a landslide victory with 765 million votes, 7.65 million votes in 2008, but he also led the party for landslide defeats on 2014 and 2016. As such, KMT currently is a very weak party, granted. However, Hong Xiuzhu said something during her visit to Sun Yat-sen's mausoleum in Nanjing. Remember when Sun Yat-sen, who founded KMT, started his revolution, he led very few people against a huge empire. So the power of idea is important. Many people believe KMT suffered landslide defeats because KMT yielded the power of idea and its agenda-setting power during Ma Ying-jeou's administration. KMT is not too close to China. Some people believe KMT became too similar to DPP. So Hong Xiuzhu is trying to once again rally the hearts and souls of KMT supporters. Will she succeed? We don't know. But it is a very clear mandated approach to this new chairwoman.
Thank you very much, Joanna. You're watching Dialogue with Dr. Zhong Ho Tao, Mr. Anna Tangen, and Joanna Lei, former legislator in Taipei. We're discussing the first official visit by Hong Xiuzhu, the newly elected chairwoman of KMT, after the KMT lost to the DPP and the majority in the legislature election. We'll be back in a short while. Stay with us. Welcome back. Not only the official communication has been actually cut off between the two sides of Taiwan Strait, but the number of tourists from the mainland on group tour has also declined by 30% if you compare it with last year. Will this deliver a major impact on the lackluster performance of the Taiwanese economy?
Yeah, that's true. The number has been decreasing in a slight way, and that's really a big shock for the Taiwan tourist industry. And to some extent, it of course would shock Taiwan economic growth. But the most reason here I want to emphasize that not just, for example, Chinese mainland's policy towards Taiwan or something like that. It's just because Tsai Ing-wen's her own wrong cross-strait policy and her own bluntness to Chinese mainland tourists. For example, in July, the car crash, the fire, and that time Tsai Ing-wen paid no visit to those. To the dead, to their families. So that's really hurt the feeling of Chinese mainland tourists.
Tsai Ing-wen refused to pay any condolence or tribute to victims of the mainland.
Exactly.
That has hurt seriously feelings of the mainland families. What do you think of the serious consequences that may have been caused by the indifference of Tsai Ing-wen towards the mainland? And do you think this decline in the number of tourists from mainland will further erode the very poor economy of Taiwan?
Well, obviously it will. I mean, they were counting a lot on
Is this a price that
tourism.
Tsai Ing-wen will have to pay?
Well, she's going to pay it at the polls at some
And do you think
point,
this is
if
a
she is
deliberate
able.
attempt by the mainland authorities to seriously reduce the number of group tours?
No.
You don't think so?
No.
You think
That's
mainland
not true.
tourists chose not to go to Taiwan?
Of course. I mean, there's no embargo on this. I mean, Chinese consumers make their own choices on where they go. I mean, you're talking
You
about
mean they don't have any
multi-billion
feeling
dollar.
of being safe there?
They don't feel that they're wanted there, and that's quite frankly, you're not going to go somewhere where people are indifferent or talk down to you. And this is kind of the feeling. China has emerged as a very nationalist nation. There's a very strong feeling of patriotism. And you've seen this in the declines in also going into Hong Kong. Chinese consumers are now the premier consumers, especially when it comes to tourism in the world. Every country is vying for them. If they don't feel comfortable or safe in an environment, they're theirs. Now, the truth is, Taiwan is very safe. It's a beautiful country. It's part of China. There probably will, if there's a return to normalcy, be a lot more tourists coming in. But ironically, part of the problem that has happened here in this sense of Taiwanese has been kind of the shock of having so many mainland Chinese tourists come over, because some come from very different backgrounds. They come from humble backgrounds, from areas where you spit on the sidewalk and it's not a big deal, where you maybe cross and push or you don't stand in line. And this has caused a great schism. I mean, at least on a cultural basis many times. Oh, they're not like me, all right, therefore I'm not Chinese. But they don't, this lack of understanding of what in essence was their own history maybe 50, 100 years ago is kind of sad. I mean, they should be looking at these people as people who are learning, who are coming to the country, who are spending money.
I believe Tsai Ing-wen must have made many campaign pledges, but the bread and butter would first of all lay the groundwork for the popular support, whatever the administration. Now, Joanna, do you think approval rating of Tsai Ing-wen has plummeted as a result of the deterioration of the Taiwanese economy?
Well, certainly Tsai Ing-wen made campaign promises in terms of everything will be status quo. So after she took office and when mainland China tourists started declining, we saw tour bus drivers getting on a rally in front of the Tsai Ing-wen office. We saw taxi drivers, street peddlers, gradually going on the streets yelling, what was the status quo you promised us? So gradually, people will feel the economic crunch and probably will ask Tsai Ing-wen to answer to her own promises. However, the current Tsai Ing-wen, under such scrutiny, is not changing her position but leaning more towards the Taiwan independence agenda, which gave her the greatest support. Words are not as loud as action, or we should say action is louder than words. In her recent nomination of Supreme Court justices, you could easily see how she picked 7 people who could be pushing the Taiwan independent agenda, even if she doesn't formally come out and make any statements, the Supreme Court justices would just push and advance the agenda. So at this point, I think Taiwan is still not seeing a Tsai Ing-wen who is trying to move back to the original peaceful development approach across Taiwan Straits. She is, on the other hand, leaning more towards the Taiwan independent agenda at this point.
Pretty soon, the APEC Leaders Summit will take place in Peru, and James Song, head of People First Party in Taiwan, has been appointed by Tsai Ing-wen as the head of the Taiwanese delegation. What do you think of the allegation that James Song, who was given a red carpet ceremony by the predecessor of Xi Jinping as a serious political force from Taiwan, this time around, do you think he's likely to be given a cold shoulder? There won't be any possibility, for example, of a dramatic corridor encounter, to say nothing of an official meeting between Xi Jinping and James Song. Do you think this is likely to happen?
I don't think that would happen. There are still some uncertainties. For example, Song could have a chance to go to Peru to attend APEC. That's still a question now. And another question is, even James Song has that chance to go to Peru, maybe it's very hard for him to meet President Xi, just like his predecessors, just like Lian Zhan or other figures. So the most important point is whether James Song could be authorized from Tsai Ing-wen to accept 1992 consensus. Could be authorized, then there is no question at all.
Is there any sign from Tsai Ing-wen to authorize James Song? I mean, you could go ahead with the 1992 consensus.
No, that would be too transparent. She'd be looking to pay things. I mean, she's dancing on the head of a pin. Her political agenda is not in line with her economic. And she's trying to send mixed signals to everybody, but I think very clearly, especially with the appointment of these judges, she sent her intentions. That was one of their big hopes, that this would be a great avenue to replace the amount of economic activity with China. That's gone. Their ability to negotiate bilateral FTAs and things like that, very, very slim. They're increasingly cut off. It's just very hard to see how they can go forward without some sort of rapprochement with China.
Joanna, is it very difficult for Taiwan, therefore, to be accepted by the World Civil Aviation Organization, and the Interpol as a formal member because of the reluctance of Tsai Ing-wen to accept the 1992 consensus, which is the bottom line, actually, for the mainland authorities to resume any formal political dialogue across the Taiwan Strait? Your take, Joanna?
Well, certainly people in Taiwan are keenly aware of the current situation, because in the past 8 years we were able to go to WHA as observer. We were part of ICAO, Interpol, and other major meetings, climate change, and so on and so forth, in which whenever Taiwan was given an opportunity to participate, Taiwan also brought a lot to the table. We have a lot to contribute. Now, with the current suspension of all communication government to government across Taiwan Straits, Taiwan no longer enjoys the international space as previously enjoyed by the Ma Ying-jeou administration. That will eventually come back and haunt Tsai Ing-wen administration. What about the status quo you promised us? I repeat this question because people chanted it on the streets. What about the status quo? You said nothing would change, but now they are changing. So gradually the pressure will start rising within Taiwan, but for Tsai Ing-wen to change her position and authorize James Song, I agree that it may be too sharp a turn at this point for her.
Biggest threat always comes from within. Let's look at the partisan wrangling, perhaps within the KMT itself. Now, Hong Xiuzhu, the newly elected chairwoman of KMT, says instead of 一中各表, one China principle with different interpretations. She said, however, it should be 一中同表, one China but the same interpretation.
Exactly.
Now that indicates a radical departure from the principle and bottom line of her predecessor, Mai Ying-jeou, who held so dear the principle of one China with different interpretations about which side of the Taiwan Strait actually represents that China. What do you think of the internal disputes?
I think the Hong Xiuzhu's statements is much distorted by the outside. In Hong Xiuzhu's same interpretation for one China, it does not mean ROC or PRC. It just means the China in future.
What about the closure of the bank account of KMT? Will that be the end of the world?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe KMT would survive in future.
Okay. In Chinese, we have a popular phrase, 危机, in the dangers we have opportunities.
Exactly.
Silver lining of the darkest clouds. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue about the first official visit by the KMT leadership after they lost to the DPP in the campaign. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.